Build your better breakfast at Subway with the tasty 250 combo, a 16-ounce cup of freshly brewed Seattle's best coffee, and any delicious egg muffin melt. And don't hit the snooze on this deal. Right now, come in before 11 a.m. for a $5 foot-long breakfast sub. Subway, eat fresh. The B.S. Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the B.S. Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The B.S. Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The B.S. Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the B.S. Report. Not a sunny day here in Southern California. It looks like it's going to rain today. December blues. But we don't have the blues because we have an actual owner on the B.S. Report. He's on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. The owner of the Capitals. The owner of the Washington Wizards, who hopefully would change their name back to the Bullets at some point in my life. Ted Leonsis. What's happening?
Hey, what's going on?
How are you? Thanks for coming on finally.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be on, and how am I doing? I'm stressed. I haven't won a game in a while, and it's silly to believe that your life rests on wins and losses, but sometimes it feels that way.
What's it like to own two teams? Is it like having two wives?
No, on one hand, it's like having two children, though. You
Yeah.
have to make sure that you're loving them each equally, but you also have to know what motivates each one, and you have to be able to spend your time accordingly. And it's the first season I've experienced it, and it's doubled the work. And you never go into these things thinking that you're going to lose a lot of games. And all of a sudden, my hockey team's losing a lot of games, and the basketball team's losing a lot of games, and my email box blows up with angst-filled emails from two different sets of fans. So it's been a handful.
You've been very open about courting the fans and courting their feedback and all that stuff. So that's fun when you're winning, but I assume when you're not winning, not as fun.
No, I'm grown up, and I know that fans, for the most part, feel that they're in it with you. At least that's kind of the relationship I've established with the fans, and I let them vent, I let them angst, and it's their team. It's not my team. I might write the checks, but it's really the psyche of our city is in their collective, hands. And they come to the games and they spend their time and money, so I'm very, very conscious of that. And I would say for the Wizards, I've probably received less than a year 18,000 emails, and maybe 100 say some things that would make your hair curl, but the rest are filled with positive vibes, and then the ones that are being constructive do it in a very respectful way, and I'm very appreciative of that.
I had a book signing in Washington last week, and one of the reasons I like doing these book signings is you can kind of gauge the mood of the city. And I had been to Washington in 2005, and then last year, and then this year. This is by far the most bummed out as a fan base, because the Redskins are obviously in the tank. Wizards are on the comeback trail, but it's going to take a while, and the Caps weren't playing well. Is this the biggest funk you've seen as a sports city from Washington since you've been there?
Well, I still think that our team is going to do quite well in the NHL. I think we're ranked 5th or 6th in the league right now. We were first place in the regular season last year, and for most of this season we were in first place, and we've lost 7 games in a row.
Right.
Although we did pick up a couple of points along the way. I think what you said, though, is accurate in that for the social responsibility around owning a team is dramatic. And that's what people underestimate, I think, when they get into ownership. You have the collective time, pixels, energy, passion of your community in the palm of your hands as an owner, and when the Redskins win on Sunday, on Monday, all the chatter is positive and happy, and when they lose on a Sunday, it's negative, and people get dark. And when you have multiple sports teams and they're all losing on the same day, the newspaper looks like the country's at war or something dramatic. And so, it's a big, big social and psychic responsibility in owning a team, especially in a big populated urban center.
And plus this summer, because you had John Wall, you had Strasburg before he got hurt, you had Ovechkin, McNabb was coming. I think there was a lot of hope. Each team had a signature guy, and for the first time in a while, I think Washington fans were like, all right, here we go. And now it's kind of back to where we started. I want to go back to the owning the two teams thing, because now I don't know this for sure, but there can't be more than 3 owners who own the NBA and the NHL team, right? Are you the only one?
No, I know Atlanta is one ownership group.
Oh, you're right.
Denver is one ownership group.
So there's 3.
I think we might be the only individuals. New York obviously is owned by the cable company, and Philadelphia is owned by the cable company. But as individuals, I think I might be the owner in the biggest market that owns the teams. And
does it, it would just seem like it would be an advantage because you could use front office people to work for both teams, right? Or am I wrong?
No, it doesn't work that way. What we do is the audiences are very different, the brands are very different. At the building level, there is some consolidation, but the way we market and sell the Washington Capitals versus the Washington Wizards, it's totally different teams. We have centralized some in our sales organization and in the building, but I really do believe that these are very important businesses and brands, and that they deserve all of the kind of focused attention. And the NBA and the NHL are, different sports, different leagues, and with different needs to different audiences.
So basically, if you're a cheapskate, you could do it, but you're not. You're doing it correctly.
I'm not doing this for the money. No, I don't think I ever will. I think that it is like being a public servant. That's how I look at it, and I'm sure one day my heirs will be advantaged because the value of the teams increase over your lifetime. But my goal is to I would really like to win a championship, and I think that nothing brings a city closer together than a winning sports team, and nothing creates a lifelong memory like winning a championship. And there's very few enterprises in a major urban city that define that city in that period of time. When you just go through like your checklist, universities, they have the longevity here. It's Georgetown University. I went to Georgetown. I'm on the board. Public space, New York has Central Park. We've got the mall. Iconic real estate, the Empire State Building. We have the monuments. Big media properties, the Washington Post, the New York Times, and sports teams. Those are the 5 category of iconic brands and businesses that define a city in generations. And if you win a championship, it's almost immortal. It almost lasts a lifetime as a memory for fathers and sons and mothers and daughters, and friendships are built around that. It becomes the touch point, and that's just such a fantastic, one-of-a-kind opportunity to be able to do it and have twice the ability to succeed by owning 2 teams. Really is a very, very cool lifetime dream.
Yeah, it's like you're playing 2 hands in blackjack.
Yeah. You know what? That's a great way to look at it.
Double your odds. The last Washington team that won was the Redskins team with Mark Rippon, which I think I'm going to say was like 1990 or 91. I don't remember the exact date. So it's been 2 decades. Now you're talking about basically anybody under 25 has no recollection of a Washington title, which is a
that's
long
true.
time.
I think winning a championship's the hardest thing to achieve in any enterprise that you go after. I mean, there's so much has to go right. Yes, you have to collect and build and develop talent, and then there's the alchemy with the coach. But you also have competition. You're competing with 29 other franchises and owners that are as talented as you and as wealthy as you and as smart as you or smarter. But then you have all this random stuff thrown in, like health. The last month our team's been decimated with the flu and with injuries and the like, and you have to overcome that. And then you have luck. We played the Rangers the other day. We lost 7-0. I mean, that was a spanking. And we had 4 shots on goal that hit the post. And, if 2 of those had gone in instead of not going in, and it's 3-2, it's a whole different game. And so luck becomes vital. And then you have the officials. Guy makes the right call or the wrong call, or call goes the wrong way, and all of a sudden you've lost that game, and you can never get that back. And so for all of that to come together over a 82-game season and then 4 rounds of the playoffs, that's why, frankly, when you win a championship, you see grown men cry. You don't see grown men cry when they sell their companies or they take it public or they, get a big order. They cry when they win championships.
And you had a little luck last May. You won the NBA lottery, which is tough to do. The percentages are not in your favor. You didn't cry that time. But you got a guy who, in my opinion, is the best player in that draft by far. I mean, I think people forget Blake Griffin, who is the other Rookie of the Year candidate. He was in the draft before. I think John Wall was the only sure thing guy in that draft, and you got him. Haven't had a chance to spend time with him the last few months. How do you feel about him assuming that mantle as the guy in Washington someday?
Well, I have a lot of faith and belief in John Wall. He's otherworldly talent, and he's also a very high character, self-motivated young man. It's been unfortunate right now that he's been hurt, and we're all being hyper careful because he's so young and he'll have such a long career, not to rush him back, not to have him play hurt, because even though we are rebuilding the team around him, I believe there'll be a long arc in which we can, tell that narrative, and he'll have a long career here. And, he's missed 10 games, and so it's been difficult for our team, and you can see it in our record. We're missing 4 players out of our top 8, top 9 rotation. Josh Howard is getting ready to come back. I think he's going to help the team a lot. Andre Bloch, who's, a big forward who can score a lot of points, he's been hurt. Yee, who, is coming off the bench and providing us with a lot of points, he's been hurt, and of course John Wall. And so when you're rebuilding, you're thin to begin with. We have a lot of young players. I think we're the 3rd youngest team in the league right now, and we've just been decimated by injuries, and it shows not only in our performance, but most certainly in our record.
What's the difference between having a bunch of young guys on an NBA team and having a bunch of young guys on an NHL team?
Well, I think it should be, in theory, easier to rebuild an NBA team than an NHL team. In the NHL, our best player, a player like Alex Ovechkin, if his time and shifts are managed correctly, he should play 22 minutes a game. And you roll all 4 lines, and you play fully 23 players per game.
Yeah.
And you compare that with the NBA, where your roster is 13, 14, up to 15 players, but the rotation that the coach plays is usually 7, 8, perhaps 9 players. And your best players, when they're healthy and you're a gel team, can play 40-plus minutes. How many minutes do you think Kobe and LeBron play when they're playing good teams? Right? They're rested very strategically, but their minutes are probably 43, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And so we want to rebuild the team. We had 3 first-round picks last season. Trevor Booker's starting to play some serious minutes. Serafin is starting to see some time. We'll get John Wall back out there. My assumption is we're going to have more picks. If we make some trades, maybe we get more picks, and we continue to develop. And then we use trades and then selectively free agency when the time is right to enhance and enrich the team, because then we'll know what we have and, where we could use a boost.
You read my book, and there's a whole chapter in my book about the secret of basketball and about that it's really, the secret is basically that it's not about basketball, it's about how the personalities mesh and guys sacrificing, stuff like that. Doesn't appear to me right now that you have that type of team, and I think you know that. Is this like a 5-year plan to transform the identity of this team? Like, what's your timetable for this?
Well, your book was so big, it'll probably take most people 5 years to read it.
Yeah, you have an advantage. You finished it before anyone else.
I have to say, though, and I'm not just complimenting. I read the book, and I really related to the book. It reminded me of my childhood, and I thought you did a magnificent job on it.
Thank you.
And you've seen me blog about The Secret, and
yeah.
Yes, I do believe that there is a culture and a chemistry and we're in it together, and winning is the only thing that's important, but that there are these things that you have to sacrifice, and the way you cast the team and what you celebrate and how you reward are key parts of that process. And that frankly was why I was personally most excited about having a player like John Wall drop in our lap. Innately, he celebrates more when a teammate scores than when he scores.
Yeah.
His psyche, his self is tied up in how well the team does and how he is adding value to a process. And he sees leadership as being able to be selfless. And
right.
You can't teach that. And when you combine that outlook with great physicality and off-the-chart basketball IQ, we think we have a very special player. And, once he's back, we'll be able to see who gels with him, who gets it, who's internalized it, and we'll be able to build around him.
Gilbert Arenas, obviously, he plays the same position as John Wall. Your future is John Wall. It's pretty clear that Gilbert's going to have to adjust his game a lot to fit in, which I think he's tried to do. On the other hand, logically you just look at it and you say, well, it makes more sense if we trade Gilbert and get X. And I think Gilbert knows that. Do you think that's affected him this year? Because I do think he, from a demeanor standpoint, he just seems so different this year. Like, I do feel bad for him.
Well, I'm a Gilbert Arenas fan and supporter. I was a fan before I owned the team, and I like and respect him, and I like his game. We cannot forget, though, that he missed almost 2 full seasons with injury.
Yep.
He missed last season with a decision that he made that forced him to miss the season because of a suspension. So he had 3 years without the continuity of being able to play competitive basketball at the highest level. And so now he's come back, and I think he's played quite well, but to the fan base, who remembers Gilbert being, I think statistically, one of the 5, certainly one of the top 10 players in the league, he's not quite at that peak yet.
Yeah.
But I think he's ahead of schedule when you see how many points he's scoring, how he is sublimating his natural instinct to be a leader on the floor and distribute the ball, and he's playing much better defense. So I've been very, very happy with Gilbert as a player, with as a teammate. And, in the conversations that I've had with him, he's been positive. But he's so competitive that deep in his heart of hearts, he wants to find the path and the way to get back to being that really dominant player. And I don't think you just turn that switch on and off. I think that there is a price that you have to pay for that. And I think, he can be a great player again, and he can play even better with a John Wall. I got at a Knicks game the other day, I got to spend some time with Walt Frazier. And, Walt was asked the same kinds of questions when Earl Monroe was traded from the Bullets to New York.
Good point, yeah.
How will you play with one ball? And, if great players like playing with great players, and they'll get to figure it out. The issue we've had right now is that John Wall's missed a lot of games because he's hurt, and they haven't been able to develop that chemistry.
Right. Mark Cuban, who, he's talked about being an owner pretty candidly and the structure of a team and all that stuff. It drives him crazy when people think that GMs make trades and coaches, and that the owner's not involved, because his theory is that, this is a business and the business stops with one person. And if people don't think that the person who owns that business isn't ultimately making all the major decisions, they're insane. Do you agree with that?
No, I disagree. Mark is, I think, very unique. He's incredibly smart, incredibly passionate, and lives and breathes his team, and he had enough confidence in himself that he could make basketball decisions. I, on the other hand, I am not as smart and as passionate in terms of the pure basketball side of it as Mark is.
Huh.
I never played professional hockey. I never played college hockey. I didn't do that in the NBA either. And I believe that you hire coaches and general managers, and they have scouts and assistant coaches, and that's their job. Our job, what I view my job, is to set strategy and culture and budget, and to be visible and really work the business side of things. And, as I've told, at least for the Capitals, today I just got a news release that we extended our number 6 defenseman, John Erskine, to a 2-year extension. No one talked to me about that. No one, right? I mean, I read the news release online, and they shouldn't have to run that by me. If they want to trade Alex Ovechkin because he hasn't scored in 10 games, they're probably going to come talk to me about that one.
Right.
And so I do think that it's the day-to-day operations need to be left to the professionals. They can't vary, though, from the strategy. And so that's when you have a disconnect between owner and general manager or coach. So, we at the Caps, we had to fire a coach once, and we did it with reluctance because we said we're going to blow our team up, rebuild it, do it on young players, take our lumps, get the young players playing, and we're going to play an offensive, aggressive way. And our coach was more old school, and he agreed, but he loved vets, and he was not teaching. He was always mad when the young kids were making mistakes. And, we were losing, but the team wasn't improving. We didn't see the upside. And so there we had to make a coaching change, and Bruce Boudreau came in, and he had coached a lot of the young kids, and he started to give them more ice time. And 2 years later, a couple of the players that weren't playing were, 2 of the top 6 players in the NHL. And so Ernie Grunfeld, who's the GM and president for the Wizards, and our coach, Flip Saunders, and I spent a lot of time talking about, what will happen in a rebuild? How hard is this going to be? what is it that we're looking for, and I want to build an identity. I want the team to be tough to play against. I want the young kids to learn and to build a bond and to go through the hard times together, and we're in it together. But if you vary from the strategy, that's when you'd have to come to see me. If all of a sudden you said, hey, I'm not playing the young kids, I want to win right now, and the only way to do that is to trade our picks and our young kids so that we can win a couple of more games this year, that I wouldn't allow. That's where I would step in and say that's not what our strategy and vision and the overall plan for the team is. But
and that actually, I was going to say that actually happened right before the year before you took over, because I think Abe Pollin, who was sick, wanted the team to be competitive immediately. They gave up the number 5 pick for Mike Miller and Randy Foye. They got rid of a couple contracts, and the pick ended up being Ricky Rubio, but 2 spots later was Stephen Curry, and I think that's a trade that I think they made from a point of weakness, right?
Well, trust me, when we're doing the due diligence, that was a point of pain, and it's even a point of pain for the fan base. They lived through a 19-win season, and we traded the pick so that they could get Mike Miller and Randy Foye, thinking that the team would go to the next step. Then the incident happened with Gilbert, and there were some injuries, and the team won 25 games. So neither of those players is with our team right now. We lost a year, and we had nothing to show for it. Now, that wouldn't have been my strategy.
Yeah.
But I didn't own the team then, and I'm not saying the strategy was right or wrong. It's just wrong for what my belief is. And I believe that you rebuild your team off the back of generationally young talent that you draft and develop. And I have data to support that, right? We played and got crushed by the Lakers the other night, and they have an unbelievable team, but their backcourt, Kobe Bryant and Derek Fisher, they were both drafted by the Lakers in the first round.
Yeah.
And there's been a cast of characters that's come in and out, but those two guys have been bedrock. Michael Jordan was drafted by the Bulls, and yes, they traded and went around him, and Tim Duncan was drafted by San Antonio, and Hakeem was drafted by Houston, and you just go through their rosters, and their key players, the number 1 and number 2 options, usually are drafted and developed by the team. I look at the exciting teams around the league right now, and most of the key players are the younger players that have been drafted. I love watching Oklahoma play, right?
Yep.
It's a team that's young, up and coming, all drafted and developed, and so I just look at it from an analytic standpoint, and I know it's very infrequent that it's just the players that you draft that get you home, but you got to start somewhere. And my experience with the Caps, in 1 year we drafted Alex Ovechkin and Mike Green and Jeff Schultz, and Mike Green and Alex Ovechkin were 2 of the 6 starting All-Stars, first team NHL.
Yeah.
And they were both drafted, and they'll be here for a long, long time. And Nick Backstrom is one of the best players in the league, and we drafted him, and he just signed a long-term 10-year extension with us. And so that's what I believe. That's the strategy that we'll adhere to. And the only time that somebody kind of gets in trouble or hears from me or needs to meet with me is when they go off strategy.
See, you're doing this correctly because you're going to be there for the long haul. And I don't mean to kiss your butt, but you're going to be there for the long haul. You don't want to be in no man's land, which is I really think the Wizards were in the mid-2000s, where they weren't going to win the title. They were entertaining. They could win a playoff series and maybe even 2, but they weren't going to win the title. And you don't want to be in that range where you're winning 35 to 47 games a year and you're not bad enough to really get the good lottery picks and you're not good enough to win the title. It's just you're treading water, basically.
Well, that's very astute of you to be blunt. That's where we were with the Caps.
Yeah.
We were always the 8th seed, or we would just miss the playoffs, and we were always picking 15th, 16th, 17th in the draft.
It's death.
And
you're going to slowly die.
Then we were bad, really bad for 3 years, and we traded a lot of our good players for picks and prospects. And, 4 years later, we ended up with the best record in the NHL. And so, young players can develop. It takes them 3-4 years to kind of start to hit their stride. But when you have a lot of them playing together and they go through the tough times and they really get to learn the system and they're coachable, all of a sudden you can wake up and have a really, really good team for a really long time. I mean, I want the Caps to win a Stanley Cup this year. I wanted us to win a Stanley Cup last year. But I don't think this is our last gasp. I think we're going to be a playoff team and a team with upside and a team that's really, really good over another decade.
And I think the mistake owners make a lot of the time is that they don't trust the patience of a fan base. I actually think fan bases will be really patient as long as they feel like there's a plan and as long as they feel like the owner is going to be there for a while and he knows what he's doing. When they don't get patient is when the plan is shifting year to year and they don't understand, well, last year we did this. Why are we doing this now? That's when you get impatient. I think if you come out and you're honest and you'll be like, hey, look, we want to build a team that's going to be good 8 years from now, not a team that's going to be good 6 months from now, and this is part of the process. I think they would trust that.
Well, I agree with you, and that is the case. Now, it's very hard when you're going through it, and it's there isn't a day that goes by where someone in the media or some blogger or someone will say, fire this guy, change that guy, make this trade, and as a way to get a knee-jerk reaction. And, let's be honest. I watched our game last night, and the first half to me was unwatchable basketball. If I didn't own the team, I would have struggled to sit through the first half.
Right.
Second half was much better. Both teams were executing much better. We cut a 23-point lead down the tied it. We ended up losing, and at least it was fun. But I don't like spending my time, effort, money, pouring my heart and soul into something and watching a team that doesn't perform. But I know what I signed up for, and I have a model in the Capitals that worked. Right, we sell out every single game. We have one of the best records in the entire league over the last 4 years. And, we have upside. We're mentioned in the breath of Stanley Cup contender, even though we've lost 7 games in a row. And so I know that there's no pain, no gain, and that nothing is easy in life. And there's just everywhere you look data that shows that a sugar buzz isn't good. Signing that one free agent and saying, there you go, we fixed our team, we're on our way. It's not that easy. It's not checkbook practice that makes for a great team.
You're smart. I can't wait to work for you as your next GM. It's going to be great. We're going to get along so well. It's going to be awesome. I already looking at houses in Washington. I was thinking about a condo first, and then maybe move to a house eventually in Virginia or something. We can't talk about the lockout because you'll get fined, and then I'll feel bad. But we can talk about your experience being an NBA owner, since you've been an NBA owner for 6 months now? 5 and 6, 5.5, something like that.
Yeah, I don't know what it's like to be an NBA owner. I only know what it's like to be a Washington Wizards. Well,
you've had to deal with Mr. Stern, I'm guessing, a few times.
Well, I've known Mr. Stern for a long time, and I respect the commissioner. I like the commissioner. I also fear the commissioner.
Right.
And his advice to me was pretty simple. You've built something good that could be great with the Washington Capitals. Your instincts there to be very close to the fan base and leave the team building in the hands of the professionals was a wise one. And you're in a great market. Be patient, make the right level of time and financial investment, and more likely than not, you'll have a successful franchise. Just know that every one of your partners is out there trying to beat your brains out.
Right.
And, that's the unbelievable thing about the league. I like Mark Cuban. Mark wants to kick my butt every day. And
okay.
And, you have to get that. And so I haven't spent any time really in thinking about league matters because I have so much work to do here locally. With the NHL, I've gotten involved with the league and, on the executive committee, I'm on the new media committee, and I can add some value, but I have so much work to do in just trying to get the Washington Wizards to be a much better enterprise and franchise that it would be presumptuous of me to say I know what I'm doing when we have one of the worst records in the league and we're not selling out games. So I have work to do.
It's the only thing that interested me about the new owner part would be like if it was like high school where you come in and people are mean to you the first couple months, or is there cliques? Like there are people like Cubans like, hey, we have the smart internet group over here. We're going to bring you in. Like that stuff doesn't happen.
No, there's no. I've always wondered why there's no ownership for dummies manual, right? Because
you should write it.
Certainly, when I came into the league, a lot of the things that I thought were intuitive ended up being counterintuitive. And
is there an example?
Yeah, I think that there was one, get people into the building, give tickets away, let them sample, and then they'll come back. And when they're in the building, they'll buy merchandise and the like. Just like AOL gave away discs.
Right, not true, I guess.
And so then you soon come to realize the exact opposite is true. When you give tickets away, you suck the value out of the currency for all of the ticket holders.
Wow.
2, when you give someone a ticket, you forget that it's their time and their money that a fan is giving you. So there's no vested interest. So when you give a ticket away, less than 40% of the people that get a free ticket actually show. They actually walk through. And because they were given the ticket for free, when they come to the game, they don't spend any money here. So, very quickly when you meet like a new owner and they go, well, there's nobody there and I don't like seeing empty seats, so I'm giving tickets away, I could tell them, that's like the worst thing you can do. Suffer through it, build value, build a really good team, and then people will, create the demand for you. But
right.
That's just one that I could give as an example.
That was a good one. I've written a lot about my fear for this decade with sports teams where because the home experience is so good now and people have these big TVs and they're in HD and I can watch 8 games every night, it reduces the incentive to actually go to an NBA game, and you drive down. If you have kids, you got to get a babysitter, then you got to pay for parking. You go, oh, where do I eat? Let's grab up food. It's a lot easier to just say, screw it, I'm just going to stay here. All right, how concerned are you that we're heading into this decade where it's just as fun to stay at home than go to a game?
Well, I think that's a very big question. In fact, I saw the other day a sponsor running an ad essentially telling fans that it's better to watch the game on their television than it is to go to the arena.
Oh, no.
And I said, boy, I don't know if that's a good positioning for anybody. I believe that the communal experience is vital for venues, and that that I obsess about everything from the pregame show to, the hosts and hostesses when you walk into the arena, to the lighting, to the music, to the videos, to the website, to the interactive apps, and that it's up to us to make the in-arena experience so one of a kind, so event-oriented that you just got to do it. You just can't not be there. And so I think that's the challenge for all of us in sports, to make it so compelling that if you aren't there, you think you're going to miss something dramatic, and you wish you were there instead of on your couch watching it on television.
And I think the biggest difference, and I'm feeling it with the Clipper games this year, because I was ready to give them up 2 years ago just because they stink and they're getting blown out by 20 points every game. But then they won the lottery and they got Blake Griffin. So now it's like, all right, I'm going to get him again for Blake. Well, he gets hurt. I suffered through another year. Now I'm like, I'm giving these up. That's it. Then you start hearing the reports about Blake, and you're thinking, like, I don't want to give these up, and then this guy turns out to be great. And now he's so much fun to watch in person that I'm really happy I have my tickets. But if they didn't have him, I'd probably be out. That would be it for me because of the option of having so many games.
I think ultimately overall team success drives the community, and you can get by having a great player, but if you have a great player within a team format where the team is successful, that's when you really get the magic. And that's when you get great demand. We see it with the Caps. We've sold out almost 80 games in a row now. I think 79 games in a row.
But the big part of that is you have Ovechkin.
Well, no. We had Ovechkin and we weren't selling out. It's when we had Ovechkin and we started winning. And so that combination not only has done great things for the franchise, but also for the fans. They buy season tickets knowing that they can sell their season tickets because there's so much demand. We've got a waiting list of almost 3,000 people that want to buy season tickets. And so any game you can go online and you'll find about 2,000 to 3,000 tickets for sale from our season ticket holders. And it's almost like I venture capitalize them.
Wow.
And they sell at a markup, and that markup for the 5 or 10 games that they sell help them to pay for their tickets for the games that they do attend.
Well, I have a surprise for you. We have one of your season ticket holders on the line right now, my buddy Joe House.
Oh, great.
Are you there, House?
How are you?
Hey, how are you?
Fantastic. It's a great day. Johnny Erskine just got re-upped.
Yeah, see?
One of my favorites.
And
I just read about it.
Ted admitted that he had no idea that it happened because he's such a good delegator that they'll do those kind of things. House, explain to Mr. Leonsis your appreciation for how the Caps have been transformed.
Well, it's an enormous appreciation. I come by my Washington Capitals experience. My bona fides are legitimate. I know I mispronounced it. My father was an original Washington Capitals season ticket holder in 1974, and he and his brother would take me and my brothers out to games in the old Cap Center back when you were allowed to smoke in the arena and the players played without helmets and masks. So
those are great days.
Yeah, those were great days. I mean, just what I really remember is the haze in the stadium.
Yeah,
as a kid. But in any event, and
everyone does. Remember, they used to smoke cigarettes.
Oh yeah,
yeah, that's right. I've had season tickets to the Caps periodically, kind of off and on over the years, depending on where I was professionally in my life. But the transformation of the Caps, and I think the thing that's been interesting is you had to get the taste of a little bit of kind of failure with, and since I'm a fan, I have the luxury of calling it the Snyder Plan, which is going out and getting the most expensive, brightest free agent star, which the Caps did with Jágr, and that didn't work out. And then you had a little bit of time there to sort of see what worked, get your feet under you, and the rebuilding that you did deploy. It hurt for 3 years, And, everybody kind of felt that pain, but the expectations were managed appropriately. Look, everybody, be patient, we'll get there. And so I'm really excited about what's going to happen with the Wizards because, obviously the Caps have been a wild success. I'm actually going to Pittsburgh for the outdoor game on January the 1st.
Nice.
So, the Caps are the team that I have season tickets to right now, not the Wizards, but maybe 2 years from now I'll be a Wizards season ticket holder again.
Thanks. Well, we're being given the benefit of the doubt. I have to say that I'm thrilled that the city and the fan base is believing in what we're doing. Our revenues are up year over year. I've been very transparent and honest and open on my blog and one-on-one meetings through email saying, look, we're in this together and this is going to be hard. I'm not going to try and sell you and fool you that I have a magic wand and I can turn this around. It takes a lot of hard work and it takes a lot of belief in what you're doing. And there's going to be times when it's just going to be painful, and I get that. And but at the end of it, we could end up by being bad, being really, really good. And those high picks are really, really important, and they represent hope. They represent a better day. And you've seen we used Oklahoma as a case study. They traded away some really great players for picks. And, they got the first or second pick in the draft, and then they had the fifth pick in the draft. And, I think that team won, Bill, and did they win 50 games last year?
Yeah, and I still think they're the team that's going to make the Western Finals this year, even though they started out
I don't
slow.
think the Wizards have won 50 games since the 70s.
House, actually, we would have long phone calls about this. And it drove House crazy that anybody thought that the Wizards could win a title with the best three that they had because it was an all-offense, no-defense team, and you just had to look at the history of the league, and that those type of teams just don't win titles.
Right.
So House would get frustrated.
Yeah, I was excited. The team, the acquisition of Gilbert, Larry Hughes' performance, the arrival of Caron Butler, that was transformative for the franchise. That did take the Washington franchise from a team that was not even in making the playoffs into kind of an exciting team with an exciting identity, and they made the playoffs, and there was a little bit of a rivalry with Cleveland. And then the thing that sort of grew to be concerning was how do we get from that level to the next level, because we got bounced by Cleveland consecutive years, and I think also lost to Miami somewhere in there. But that was kind of the thing that Bill is just referring to.
And we used to talk about no man's land, which Ted and I talked about earlier, is that's the worst place to be. Hey, Ted, I got to ask you. I hate getting research from Wikipedia, but I always have to look just to make sure there's nothing weird on there that I need to know about. There was something in there that you survived the plane crash, and then that you made a list of 101 things you needed to do, and you've achieved most of the things on the list. Is that accurate? And what was the list?
Well, Bill, I'm really disappointed in you. I read your book, and you haven't read my book, The Business of Happiness.
You never mailed it to me.
I'll send you a copy of mine autographed if you'll send me your paperback autograph.
Deal. Done.
Okay.
So what happened with the plane crash?
Well, you'll have to read the book, but it's almost true. The plane didn't crash, but we were in an emergency landing situation, and I'll be sincere with you. I started praying, and I thought that was inauthentic because I don't pray often.
Right.
And so I reverted to type, and I said, look, if you let me live, I'll leave more than I take. I promise I'll play offense with the rest of my life. And obviously I made it through, and a weekend later I kind of made this list of the 101 things to do before I die. And for the last 30 years or so, I've been trying to clip them off, and I think I'm at 82.
Really? 82?
Yeah, and it's remarkable. Everyone has a reckoning. Every organization has a reckoning. I had my reckoning, and so I made the list. Well, that's what you do in business, too. You kind of make yours my goals and objectives, and you try to manage through those. And then the power of envisioning. I wrote down, make a movie, win an Oscar or an Emmy. In 2007, I made a movie, my first movie, and it won the Emmy Award for Best Documentary. And it was like, wow, how random is that? But I don't think it was that random. I put on my list, own a sports team, win a championship. And, I've ended up owning sports teams. I haven't won a championship yet. And so the list has become a very powerful management life tool for me and my family. And if you go to my blog or you type in Ted's 101 list, I'm sure you'll be able to pull it up on the web. But I prefer you read my book.
Joe has a list that is it's two things, and one is eat, and then the other is sleep. And that's it's a two-thing list, right?
No,
did you add anything, Joe?
And root for the Washington team.
Oh yeah, and root for the Washington teams. It's a 3-person list. Well, that was awesome. I'm excited to read that book. I can't believe you achieved 82 of the 101.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. House, any last words?
Go Wizards.
Oh, House, you got to ask him about the bullets.
Can we get you guys to a game? We'll sit.
Of course.
We'll write down moments of secret magic sauce, and then we'll look at each other and frown when we see behavior that we know is not conducive to winning and bringing joy to fans.
Non-secret behavior. House, do your quick plea for the bullets.
Well, I actually think, Ted has been open-minded about restoring the team to that identity, and even has committed to changing the color scheme back to the red, white, and blue. But I think he speaking of creating lists, had a list for the Wizards, contemporaneous with his arrival, of things that he wanted to put in place, and changing the name, I think, has been kind of reprioritized. It was near the top, but it's been reprioritized. Is that right, Ted?
Well, no, the big issue is I have so much to do that I can affect right now, and if you change the IP and the brand in the NBA, it takes 25 months or more.
Yeah.
And so it just seemed disingenuous to say, yes, that's what I'm going to be focused on, when no one would see any improvement or anything for a long, long time. We have announced that we will be going back to our primary red, white, and blue colors. I think that'll make people feel a lot more comfortable. And as time goes on, I joked the other day, I said, hey, if we won a championship next year with the Wizards, no one would want us to go back to the Bullets name. The reason people want us to go back to the Bullets is that they remember the team winning a championship and going to the finals and having Gus Johnson and Wes Unseld and Phil Chenier and Earl Monroe as the generationally great players. And
yeah, I'm one of those people.
You left out Alvin. Not a coincidence.
I get that. I empathize, but, Rome wasn't built in a day.
That's right.
All right, House, you're going to stay on the line. Ted's going to leave. One last question for Ted. Who drops AOL? We're the last two people with AOL right now. You have an AOL address, and I have one. Is this just a stare down with us?
I just saw the other day a report on the most video consumption on the Internet, and AOL was top 5.
Nice.
And I know. I still use the client. You still have an AOL address, as do I.
I love it.
We still have tens of millions of people, but we are old school.
We are. It's funny to be old school with the Internet, but I think having an AOL is old school, and I like it. I don't care. Ted Leonsis, thanks so much for your time. Best of luck with the Wizards.
Thank you. Really appreciate all the time today.
All right,
take
care.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
All right, Joe House. That was fun.
I'm here. Thank you for having me in.
Yeah, I figured you'd have two things you wanted to say. I didn't want to leave you out.
Yeah, you covered most of the territory. I actually was going to ask about kind of the rebuilding. I wanted to hear how long it was going to take, and I know that it's more art than science, but you guys covered that. And I also wanted to hear a little bit of his thoughts on best practices from and lessons learned from the hockey lockout. But I guess the prudent thing to do is to leave that alone so he doesn't get in trouble, since he's only been an owner for 6 months.
Yeah, those guys aren't allowed to talk about the lockout and that stuff. Let's talk NBA really quick.
Yeah. What a week.
It was a good night of hoops last night. But by the way, this is my because Bucher dominated the ball in our podcast.
He's great, though.
No, he is great. But it was like we were stationary shooters in that podcast. You were James Posey, and I was Eddie House.
He had a lot of things, I think, stored up.
He did. We just had to let him go. He was hot. We had to give him the ball.
Yeah, you with that landline thing, he finally got the landline. He was ready to just bust out.
We sent him a couple picks. We went and grabbed some rebounds for him. It was good. He was.
We even gave him a couple heat checks, and his hand was still hot, so we just had to let him go.
Last night, the Spurs won an awesome game. It was really entertaining, and Carmelo played his butt off, which had to have been frustrating because there's clearly an on-off shift. And I know that his stats have been good this year, but last night he played with the kind of passion that he used to play with, and he was really mad after the charge and all that stuff. Do you believe in this Spurs team?
I do. Of course I do. I don't know why I wouldn't believe in them. The only thing I guess you are concerned with is the thing that you're concerned with annually with those guys, which is their health.
Yeah.
They have encountered in years past these spates where Parker's out for 15 games, or Ginobili is out, or they're limiting Ginobili's minutes. But I think they've kind of found a zone here where at least, as much as it is within their control, they really have a nice rotation. The guys are getting the right kinds of minutes and making a contribution that, is creating kind of a really powerful, kind of 8-man dynamic. And
what helps them? The Jefferson is good again. I don't know what happened to him last year. He's changed his game. He definitely altered it, but when he's making threes like that, and he's a good athlete, and he doesn't care if he gets shots, and it's exactly what they need from that position.
We think it took him a full year to get comfortable? Is that possible?
Maybe he just went in and thought, oh, my God, I'm screwing everything up for these guys, and lost his confidence.
Yeah.
Basketball is obviously a confidence sport, and if he just – that got shaken, and then the fans are turning on him, and the media is wondering about him.
Well, I like that. I like that theory. I think that's exactly right. He came in, they paid him all that money, and he almost immediately out of the chute wasn't able to live up to the expectations, and you're absolutely right. Basketball is such a confidence game.
The thing about him that I always thought made him redeemable, and I think this is an important thing to look at with anybody, is that he had succeeded in the past in big games. That Nets team made the finals 2 years in a row, and he had a lot of big moments in those games, and he did things that lend itself to a winning team. So it was really hard for me to believe.
I also, on that same point, another thing I'd observe is that he's also very comfortable, not necessarily being the lead banana, being a second banana. Very complimentary.
Yeah. So I don't know what happened to him. He was definitely in a funk. Came back, and that contract, when they did it, it just seemed stupid. They tore up the last year of his deal and gave him a longer one. Everybody was like, what?
Yeah.
But he's been good. And then, you could see this one coming, and I even predicted it. It was one of the few predictions I got right. But Manu was due for one of these years because he's been banged up for 2 straight years now. Now, I'm still hearing that his ankles and his feet, they'll never feel totally comfortable with it. But he's been good.
The whole thing comes down to that, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing for him to be uncomfortable, but if they get, so aggravated that he can't go and give the full minutes, then that will sort of alter the course and alter the success proposition for that team.
There are certain guys that just the way they play lends itself to injury. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
Rondo sprained his ankle the other day. It was a fluky play, but the way that he plays, he's gonna bang a wrist, twist an ankle. I think Derrick Rose is like that.
I think Blake Griffin is like that.
Blake Griffin is the all-time example, and he's terrifying every time he goes to the basket.
I'm worried that John Wall might be a little like that.
John Wall might be like that.
Although he may have bad shoes.
Guys who last long in the league learn to pick their spots.
Like AI.
Yeah. Well, that's why he's in Turkey.
Think about how long he got to play and how many games, he avoided those long-term outages due to injury.
And I think that's something Wade has actually consciously tried to do over the last few years because the way he played his first 3-4 years of his career, I even remember writing once that I thought he was going to have like an Earl Campbell type career because just flame out immediately because his body took so much abuse, and he was just always getting knocked down left and right. They were like, hey, Dwayne, you're going to be out of the league in 8 years unless this changes. He's much better at picking his spots now.
Well, he also might be the single largest beneficiary of kind of the change in the rules.
Yes.
Him
and Nash.
the game has grown less physical because the way the games are called, now favors the sort of guard play over the block play, that down low block play.
Did you watch the tragic Brandon Wright performance the other night?
No, I missed it.
Yeah.
What happened?
It's just sad.
Oh.
It's just, it's not there anymore.
No first step, still low to the ground.
Jump shooter. Looks like he's not happy.
Was that the Grizzlies game? Which game was it?
It was the game that was after the Celtic-Knick game.
Oh, okay.
But that's now that and Chris Paul's knee. And we talked about this a little bit with Bucher, but we didn't really go into it. Those are the two stories that I'm looking at now, as these are transformative stories potentially, because Chris Paul doesn't seem healthy to me.
I think I agree that he doesn't look healthy, and I don't think he's healthy. But with him, I continue to subscribe to this notion that a knee injury requires a year. There's a full year of playing yourself back into shape, but psychologically also playing yourself back into the mindset where you can feel comfortable going on it.
So you're using KG as a good example for that theory.
Or Amari. I mean, guys with the microfracture surgery who have come back, and it took them, right. KG is the best recent example.
Yeah. Because
KG that's what I hope for out of Chris Paul.
Man, I hope you're right. Because I think it's more dangerous for a perimeter guy than a guy with the type of game that KG has,
Yes.
If Chris Paul loses even half of a step, that drops him from first or second point guard in the league to seventh or eighth. I
think that's true, but that's still pretty good.
No, it's still pretty good. But when you talk about franchise guys,
no, I know, that's exactly right.
And now I think both of him and Darren Williams are free agents in 2012.
Wow.
I think Williams is more of the prize at this point. He's durable. He hasn't had any major injuries, and he's playing at the same level that he's played at the last 4 years, and I don't think Chris Paul is the same.
I hope Ted Leonsis said that the Wizards will have cap space in 2012.
You might have missed that part when you were listening, but he was very clear about the lessons that he learned from the Capitals and the lessons they learned from that Randy Foye, Mike Miller trade and not being trapped in no man's land. If I'm a Washington fan, those are all the things I want to hear, because you don't want to be in no man's land. I don't care if the Celtics did this, one of the famous going for it right now and you probably shouldn't trades when they did in 2000. And I even defended it because I was so hungry for a good Celtic team. I was fine with it. 50 games into the season in 2002, they trade Joe Johnson and a number one for Rodney Rogers and Tony Delk. And that is a trade that nobody would make in 2010. But at the time, people, teams were in that mindset of, we got to win. Oh, we have a chance. We got to go for it. And that was a really, really damaging trade. Yeah,
but those guys did help for those 3 months.
Yeah, we made the Eastern Finals. And I think if PP doesn't miss that free throw in Game 4 against the Nets, we have a chance to at least go to 7.
Right.
Would have gotten killed by the Lakers.
Yes.
That trade did help them, but long term, it was a catastrophe.
No, I know. Well, it all comes down to expectation management. I mean, it's the idea of your fan base is willing to be patient if you tell them a credible story that they can believe in, and they believe you. And it's precisely what does not happen with the Washington Redskins, and has not happened in 12 effing years. Right. I'm a little bit more irrational than usual because I saw the news today that Sexy Rexy Grossman is going to be the starting quarterback for the Washington Redskins on Sunday.
That's why I wanted you to stay in the line. I figured we'd hit that and then we'd be done.
Oh.
See, here's my take, and I had something in there in my column that was up today about McNabb that I took out. I just think the guy's done. And I think it's one of those things, his stats aren't that bad, and he still looks like McNabb. It reminds me, this is what I wrote, and I took it out. It reminds me of Drew Bledsoe, that last year with the Cowboys. His stats weren't terrible. He wasn't killing the team, but something was missing. He didn't have the same kind of charisma, light in his eye. He couldn't quite move around the same, and it just, you could just tell. It's like, well, we're not going to win a Super Bowl with this guy. Don't you feel like McNabb was like that?
Yeah, sure, but what's the point of playing Grossman right now?
Maybe
it may be
good.
We're going to get the answer to, by the way, whether or not McNabb is done when he's on Minnesota or San Francisco or somebody next season, because he's certainly not going to be here. And it was, in retrospect, and this really goes to that expectation management idea that I mentioned, it was preposterous to think that he was going to be successful here. We didn't get a good dose of him at all. You have no idea whether or not he still has it, because the offensive line that they put out there and the running back by committee approach has been an abysmal failure. Plus, the defense is the worst defense in the league. So,
and your wide receivers suck. Other than that, I think you had a fair
right.
chance.
So what are we looking at when we're looking at McNabb and trying to assess what kind of quarterback he's been for the Redskins this year? I just don't get what the point is.
Well, he definitely doesn't move like he did. He's definitely not nearly as accurate as he once was.
But why the test drive of Grossman? What are we going to see from Grossman that we haven't seen?
Is it possible Shanahan is trying to get fired?
No, I can't imagine. That would be so weird.
Well, maybe.
And plus, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, but maybe he looks at this Redskins team that he has and thinks, "Wow, this is the biggest mistake I've ever made in my life. And I can't work for this guy, and he's an idiot, so I'm just going to start doing crazy things."
No, I don't think that.
No?
I do think...
I would do that.
I mean, I thought... I kind of advanced, mostly joking, the theory that the benching against Detroit, when the Redskins season still had a purpose and a meaning, there was still a possibility of playoffs looming back then, that Shanahan, looking at the schedule, knew that the Redskins might only win one more game and try to create, a sideshow distraction to shift everybody's focus. Let me throw this at you. If the Redskins lose on Sunday the way that I expect them to lose, they may, against their three division rivals, the Eagles, the Giants, and Dallas, this may be their worst three-game stretch in the history of the franchise.
Wow.
I mean, in terms of the sound beatings that they're going to take.
And Dallas can't wait to kick the crap out of them too.
The main thing with McNabb that I find objectionable is, no matter their performance, the team likes him. They rally around him. He is a leader. Everybody on the team says so. Nobody says, that Donovan guy is all hot air or, he ain't all he's cracked up to be. You don't see any of that sniping. To a man, it's uniform. He's a leader. He brings intangibles to this thing. I think the tight end Chris Cooley talked about how, in that intangible way, he's like the best leader that Cooley has seen since he's been with the team.
Wow.
So with the benching, I think what you do is you incentivize the team to quit kind of again. We've seen this team quit a couple times here in the last 5 weeks.
Yeah, I was going to say, how else could they quit? Haven't they done all the ways they can quit? Do they have to poop on midfield? What are the other options here?
They're finding new and creative ways to lose. I think, the same deal with this quitting. I think Sunday is going to be fascinating just to see sort of what they do, how they show up.
I just remembered something. Forgot to ask Leonsis about 24/7 Caps Pens on HBO.
Oh, yeah, I missed last night.
It was good.
Yeah.
I liked it.
I'm looking forward to it.
That whole hockey player world is a world that I like to dive into on television.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating.
They were showing one of my favorite parts. They were on the plane, and the guys are playing video games against each other. It's really like the Hanson brothers in real life, watching these guys interact.
Well, part of it is, they've been on these teams since they were so young.
Yeah, they're like Arrested Development kids.
That's right.
But they had guys mic'd during a fight. Some coach you had, I'm not sure if it was, I can't remember if it was the assistant or the head coach, but just had an F-bomb locker speech. Just didn't care about the cameras. It was an F-bomb, 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 F-bomb.
Good.
It was awesome.
It's hockey.
Yeah.
What do you want?
It was great. It's a great idea.
I saved it. I'm going to watch it tonight. But I'm already going to the game on January the 1st. I'm extremely fired up for it.
You're going to Pittsburgh?
I can't wait to go to Pittsburgh and stand in the 0-degree cold.
Yeah, that was a bad decision. I would have talked you out of that one.
Well, it's a once-in-a-lifetime deal, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it's the first one for the Caps.
All right, Joe House. Congratulations on the Rex Grossman era. I know you're excited.
May it last as long as...
the Gilbert Arenas era.
No, not the Gilbert Arenas era. Gilbert's been around for a long time.
Like from now until it ends, which hopefully will be in 3 weeks.
I like that. That's a good over-under. Who will be with their team longer?
I looked up his stats. He's not doing well.
Who, Gilbert?
I mean, he's putting up points just because they have nobody to shoot, but he's shooting 39%, 32%.
He's not healthy. He's not healthy.
Yeah,
I didn't want to jump in while you were talking to Ted and make that
something
point.
Couldn't really totally bring up on the podcast, but it's I just don't think he's tradable. At least in the condition he is in now.
There you go. Yeah. He's not yet tradable. Trade deadline's in February, though.
If he was even 20% better, I think Orlando would have panic traded for him by now.
It's still time. There's still time.
That'll be great. That's my dream scenario. Is in February they panic trade Vince for Gilbert. Then not only do you get rid of Gilbert, you're my friend, I want you to be happy, but you also get to go see Vince Carter for 2 months in a situation where he's at a bad team and is totally checked out. I think that's going to be awesome.
That's the circumstances where we'll take Ted up on his offer to come and see the game and sit together and talk.
Oh, it'll be great. I can't wait to see all the different ways he quits in that situation.
Yeah, the anti-secret.
Orlando, I think they're going to do something, and I don't know whether it's they fire their coach or make a move or whatever, but that team is heading in the wrong direction. I don't think the recent losing streak is an accident.
It's really, I think one of the underrated things that they did that has really hurt them is letting Matt Barnes leave.
Yeah, well, I mean
it's a long list. Tough guy. Right, it's a longer list than that, but
has anybody wondered aloud if there's a connection between Rashard Lewis's 10-game HGH suspension and the immediate demise of Rashard Lewis's career?
I mean, he hasn't been the same since.
Fact. He had an HGH suspension. Fact. He's been in the toilet ever since the suspension. I'm just saying, those are just two facts, and you could either merge them together or just put them separately, but those are two factual statements. And between him and Vince, those guys might be bottom 5 at their positions.
Oh, I don't think they're bottom 5, but they're certainly the cost-benefit ratio is way out of whack.
Why would you want Rashard Lewis as your starting small forward at this point?
Because you're forced to start him as small forward because of what you're paying him.
I stand by my top 5.
Top 5? Bottom 5.
Bottom 5. I stand by it.
Yeah.
I'm without even looking at the other options. I'm going to go through it now. Pierce. Travis Outlaw. Would you rather have Travis Outlaw or Rashard Lewis?
Well, I mean, for the contract, the answer's got to be Travis Outlaw.
Chandler.
That's easy.
Who's the Philly small forward? I'm blanking.
Iguodala.
Oh yeah, Iguodala. Yes. Toronto's got a whole hodgepodge of guys.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I'd still rather not pay Rashard Lewis. Lil Dang, I'd rather have him.
So the contract is the thing. I mean, if we took the contract out of it, then you
can't. You have to put it in.
That's right. You have to put it in. I agree.
Going down the line, and then Vince just doesn't play defense anymore. I feel bad for Dwight Howard.
Well,
it's going to cost Dwight the Defensive Player of the Year. It's going to go to KG this year because it's a layup line against Orlando, basically.
And you can't waste these years,
No.
with Howard having his health and being as strong as he is physically right now, and with his blossoming, focus offensively.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's totally helped them.
Well, it's been overshadowed by the other factors, I think.
I'm
would
just
help
saying,
them.
it seems like the more possessions that he gets, the more everyone stands around. The ball stops, and then he does his thing and whatever. And it's like that. You got to go back to the identity that you had, in which you destroyed the Cleveland team in 2009. You gave the Lakers everything that you could handle, and I think the main reason for that, which we've discussed many times, was having the two tall forwards.
Yeah, and I mean that identity, built into that though is a highly effective Rashard Lewis, the most effective he's ever been in his career. So effective that you say at that moment, oh wow, so the contract he signed is ridiculous, but look where this team is. Look what this guy, the contribution this guy's making.
Courtney Lee makes that layup, and I still don't know who wins that Orlando series.
It would have been a lot.
Laker series.
It would have been interesting.
It's not like Kobe played out of his ass or anything.
No.
It was winnable.
It was.
Ariza made a couple threes. Fisher made that 3 when they forgot to guard him.
It would have been interesting.
Yeah.
No doubt.
All right, Joe House.
Hey, good times.
Enjoy Sexy Rexy this weekend. We'll talk to you soon.
Can't wait. See ya.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Podcenter at ESPNRadio.com.
Peace out.
That concludes another episode of the BS Report, and we leave you with this final thought. Subway Restaurants is cheering on Jared. As if losing almost 250 pounds wasn't enough, Jared has run 552 miles training for the 2010 ING New York City Marathon. He fuels his training with the low-fat Subway Club. So now, to celebrate this landmark achievement, the Subway Club is the newest $5 footlong sub for a limited time, so hurry in. And hey, Jared, what's next? Scaling Everest? Maybe kayaking the Pacific? Subway. Eat fresh.